Hi, my name is Donna Hayes, and welcome to this episode of the Beautiful Beyond Measure series, Inspired Purpose. Today, my guest is none other than Latasha Albert. Latasha's story is one that unfortunately plagues many across our globe. And today, you don't want to miss the information that she will share with us about domestic violence and how, since this pandemic, the number of cases has increased drastically. What does it do to a person to abuse another? We'll talk to Latasha today and find out how she navigated her way through and out of such a horrible situation, and how she is thriving now and helping others to remove themselves from abusive situations and to be who God predestined them to be. Beautiful beyond measure. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, inspired to live life on purpose to help others to grow spiritually, and most importantly, to grow in their divine destiny. Welcome, Latasha Albert. How are you today?
Hey, Donna, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I am so glad that you decided to join me today for this episode of Inspired Purpose. I am sure that you are going to bless so many persons who are viewing us today because of your story. And your story is one that is certainly one of inspiration and victory. And so I can't wait for you to tell and share with others what you are doing for other people who were in the similar situation that you were in. Today we're going to talk about, and I see you're repping in your purple and your black, we're going to talk about domestic violence and how it affected your life. So why don't you first, let's talk about you. You grew up in the city of Newark, and you are you just a wonderful, I know you because you're my sister. I now know you because you're a wonderful mom and a friend. And so I want you to tell us how growing up in Brick City was for you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, growing up in the city of Newark, I was the oldest of two children in a single family home. I attend George Washington Carver Elementary School on Clinton Place in Newark, New Jersey, where I studied art because I wanted to be an actress, so I thought, right?
Oh, okay.
From there, I went to Our Lady of Good Counsel High School in North Newark, New Jersey, and I was inspired to do criminal justice. I wanted to be an attorney at first, and then I went on to Morris College in South Carolina. I like reading and laughing and shopping and making my friends laugh. Kind of like how I am now, and that's I was always happy-go-lucky.
Okay. So was it difficult? You mentioned that you grew up in a single family home. Was that difficult at all? Or did it have an effect? Do you think it had an effect on your growing up at all?
The things that I saw, some things at home, I witnessed domestic violence happen to my mother. That was the first time I saw that. And I think it started to shape me kind of in a negative way from seeing her get hurt like that.
How so? When you say shape you in a negative way, how could, and I get it from the perspective, I do believe that the things that we are exposed to as children, especially depending on the age in which you witness this domestic violence, because we're sponges, right? We and we try to emulate our parents and try to do what they do. And we figure their responses should be the same responses that we give if we should find ourselves in similar situations. But tell me, how do you think that it shaped you, in what ways?
It shaped me to be a fighter. It shaped me to know at that early age that I didn't want that to happen to me.
Well, how young were you when it happened?
I believe I had to, who knows, like maybe 5 or 6. Wow. I think like 5 or 6. Okay. I knew then that I was going to be a fighter. Okay. And I didn't want anybody to hurt me like that, because my mother wouldn't fight back. And I couldn't understand as a little girl, hit him back. You know, like as a little kid, you're wondering why she won't hit him back. But in that whole ordeal, she was trying to protect me and my sister. Wow. So it shaped me. Like that was my foundation, to be a fighter.
Now I have to ask the question, was the person who abused your mom, was that your dad?
No, that absolutely was not my father.
So was it your stepfather, or?
It was my stepfather.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did that, even for that being, you know, your stepfather, like, how did he treat you in that relationship?
Different, because I feel as though from my lens, I was not the child, his daughter, their daughter. My sister was. So I always felt as if I was sort of kind of the outcast, if you will. Wow, okay. Because I was, you know, I didn't come from that union. So I felt as a little girl, I was treated a little differently. You know, I felt like my sister was more superior than I was, because I was not his child.
But that's interesting to me, because was that always, and the reason why I asked that question is because you're the oldest of the children. I am. So when he came into you all's lives, your sister wasn't born yet, correct?
No, she wasn't.
So how was the relationship prior to her coming into the picture?
I really don't remember how he treated me prior to that, because I was 4 years old when he came into our lives, you know. I was older when I was able to witness, you know, the bad things that I saw.
So did you ever ask your mom, like, why didn't she retaliate?
I did. And my mother is one of those people that's an introvert. She's not going to tell you but so much. So it was always, don't mind grown people's business. And that was the answer. And we were not to go further than that. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like that.
Yeah. You know, I think that's sort of interesting as it pertains to us in the African-American culture, right? We tend to always keep secrets. We tend to always want to push our children outside of the realm of knowing and understanding. And on some level, I understand that, but I think it also does us a disservice, right? Because at what point do you teach them, you know, that this isn't right and that you don't want the same for them, although you might be accepting of it yourself? So how does a young girl know that? How does a little girl see this happening and know not to want that for her life if mom isn't at least expressing on the other end, you know, something to help them understand?
Unfortunately, we're not taught. Unfortunately, I was not taught. Unfortunately, you kind of took the crookeds with the straights. You knew that this wasn't okay.
You took the what?
The crookeds with the straights. You know, it was bad seeing this happen to my mom, but I knew to stay out the way, sort of, kind of. So I was not taught. It was, you saw it happening and that was it. Domestic violence is the hush syndrome. I say that all the time. In every interview that I'm in, you're taught to be quiet and don't say anything. So it's not really a lecture or a book to read. You just there, you make sure you're not hurt, and that's it. And you don't tell anybody.
Wow. Yeah. Is that something that happens over time? Do you develop that mentality over time that you don't tell somebody? I mean, because so if we you know, compare two different lifestyles in a way, don't ever like allow a man to hit you. Like we were taught that, right? Don't ever allow a man to hit you. Don't allow a man to call you out of your name. That sort of thing. So tell me, from your understanding, and I'm still dealing with the perspective of you seeing this. What do you think, now that you're an adult, what do you think was the catalyst? What triggered that, if you haven't already spoken to your mom about it now, And let me maybe stop right there and preface, have you talked to her about it? And have you since found out from her why? Or did she, she's still in a place of not wanting to reveal and share?
My mother is not sharing, point blank, period. If you were not living it with us, if you were not a part of the family who knew that she was getting hurt, to this day, my mother would clearly tell you, don't talk about my business. So she's not at a point now still, and I'm an adult woman, that she's ready to open up and talk about the abuse. I've seen it, but she's not there, and I don't think she'll ever be there.
Wow. So knowing your mom, right, and understanding domestic violence from a perspective that you understand, and we'll get to that because you were a victim yourself, then I have to ask this question. What in your scope, in your view, was the reason why your mother settled for that and allowed it to happen or continue to happen?
As an adult, when I turn my lens around and I see the adult Tasha look at my mother, and in that same picture, I see the younger Tasha, I say that my mom stayed in that thing because of stability, finances. If he would have left, she would have been a single mother. That happened eventually. But in her case, I figure she stayed so that we can have. I mean, let me take the hits and the licks so that my daughters can be okay. Wow. That's why I think my mom stayed. You know, I talk a lot about, you know, that question that gets under my skin so much. Why did you stay? Because women stay for different reasons. Right. And in mommy's situation, the adult me looking at that situation, she stayed for stability so she can have for her children.
So in your experience in talking to other women about their situation, give us some understanding as to some of the other reasons why women would stay in an abusive relationship.
A lot of women stay in domestic violence relationships for multiple reasons. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. My reason why I stayed, because I was ashamed. I was totally embarrassed to tell anybody, because it's one thing that you leave your situation and you go and be with a man and he's hurting you and beating you. When you tell your family, the first thing some of family members say is you shouldn't have went. You're stupid. Why did you stay? You don't want to hear that when you're getting stumped out. You don't want to hear that. Right. So my reason was shame. Other women might stay for financial reasons, like my mom. Some might stay because they just don't have anywhere to go. Everyone want to talk about it, but no one's opening their door to welcome you in to stay so you get safety.
Wow.
So
now I got to put a pin right there because that's interesting. To say that they want to talk about it, but nobody's opening their doors. But then is that fair? Because if you're not sharing with people that you're going through this, then how would somebody know? You know, and how would they be in a position to welcome you in if you don't share? You
know, being in that situation, as I'm talking to you, I'm putting myself right back there in that moment. A lot of people you have to be careful when you're going through, because a lot of people want to get your story to gossip. They don't want to get your story to help you. So again, when you're getting hurt and you're getting beat and you're getting stumped out, and in my case, I had children with me, you're thinking about these kids being safe and feeding your kids and still providing. It's a lot going on while you're trying to be safe. The last thing you want to do is have someone open their door for you and you hear them talking about you. I think that's the most detrimental feeling in the world. So people want to talk about it, but they're not willing to help you without taking your story and making it into something.
And Tasha, I completely understand it. I think that a lot of people are into the gossip culture, right? And want to take person's stories and, use it for their daily conversation. Because it also keeps the focus off of them and what they're dealing with and going through. But I still have to push back a little bit in that, how do you know that individual, right? Because you have family members, you have friends who I'm almost sure at least one or two over your lifetime has been there for you, and that is one that you could really rely on. How is it that it would get to a place where you would go in and not trust them in that way? If they don't know, how do you know that they'll do that? I guess.
In my case,
or is it already something you have a preconceived notion about?
No, in my case, you have one time to hurt me when I'm wounded. And during that time, it only took one time from different people to talk about me. And I heard it with my own ears. It was bad enough for me to ask for help with children. But when you let me in your home, I'm hearing you gossip about me on the phone.
Okay, so now I'm at a place where I get it, because now what you're saying is that you actually tried it and you allowed someone in, and that they disappointed you in that way.
Multiple times. Family members and so-called best friends.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So talk about your first time experiencing. Now, we know that your first real experience with it was you witnessing it as a child,
right.
And it happening to your mom. But then tell me now, how do you end up? Well, no, before I ask that question, this is a good one here.
Mm-hmm.
You witnessed it.
Right.
What did it do for your psyche? In that, did you sit and look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm never going to be like that? Did you look at yourself in the mirror and say, well, that must be the way women are supposed to be? How did you view it from that standpoint?
As a little girl, I will always look in the mirror and say, I'm never letting that happen to me.
Got you. Okay.
That can't happen to me. I always wanted to be the opposite of my mother. I never wanted to experience that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then tell me how now, and take us gradually into how you get to your first experience with you being abused. And what was that like for you?
Horrible, first of all. I was married and I experienced domestic violence on multiple levels. So that's why it's so easy for me to talk about it. In my marriage, my husband was a stalker. He was the jealous man. He did a lot of cheating, and therefore he would come home and start arguments with me. He would stalk my daughter's basketball game. He would do Lifetime movies, scary kind of things. He would egg up my car when I put him out the house. He broke in my house and stole my belongings. He would come bang on the door 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and startle my children. It got to the point where the state I was living at that time made me file a PFA.
Now what's that?
Which is a restraining order.
Okay.
It's a restraining order. And he didn't even abide by the restraining order. You know, restraining orders only work if you could get to the phone. The cops can't help you if you can't call them and tell them that someone's violated, you know?
Right.
And he would just kick in the door. He'll watch me with binoculars from the bushes. And the whole time, I'm worried about my kids. I'm worried about my children, you know? So
now, are your children, I mean, for the purpose of the viewers understanding, are your children his children?
No, absolutely.
Okay, so then you feel as though, or did you see any indication, besides, of course, worrying about your children from a perspective of, I'm their mom, I need to be here for my children.
Right.
You can think he would hurt your children, or did he exhibit any type of behavior? And how long were you married first?
I was married 4 years.
4 years. So during that 4 years, did he do anything that was an indicator that he would hurt your children?
Not physically. Not physically. Because that's my ground rule. You can do what you want to me, but you touch my children or hurt my children, we are going to have a massive problem.
Now, so why could he do what he wanted to you?
Because at the time when I was going through that thing, if you want to hurt me, hurt me. Don't hurt my kids, because my children are innocent. And that's what I got from my mother when I was witnessing her going through that thing. She took the licks, but she wouldn't allow him to hurt us. So that was my mindset. So to answer your question, he wouldn't physically hurt my children. Physically, mentally, it definitely bothered them from seeing what happened to me.
Of course.
So, yeah.
Of course. Now, here we go. Here looks like a cycle happening, right? A generational curse, even maybe.
Absolutely.
But then the question becomes, do you revert back in your mind as you're being abused to that little girl, seeing your mom get abused?
All the time.
And do you remember the girl in the mirror who says, I'm not letting that happen to me?
I lost her. when you're going through, I lost her. I did not remember the girl in the mirror. I did not remember what I promised myself. I did not. At that time, you lose everything. And just mentally, I wanted to make sure my kids were okay. I lost me totally.
Yeah. But knowing now, of course, hindsight is always 2020. And knowing now that the damage that gets done, even mentally sometimes, I think is more detrimental than the physical abuse, providing you survive the physical abuse, right?
Amen.
Because the mental abuse sticks. It stays. You know, it's that old saying, this is what I cannot stand. People stop saying this. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
And the devil is a liar.
Exactly. It's the biggest lie ever told. Stop telling your kids to believe that nonsense. Because at the end of the day, what you call me, what you say about me, what you impute into my spirit through your mouth sticks with me a whole lot longer than a slap
or a bruise.
Or a bruise.
Totally agree.
That's the point. It's not, and you don't want either to happen.
Right.
But as the word always tells us, right, that the power of life and death,
it's or the power
actually,
of the tongue.
Let's be very clear. It actually says death and life first. We often twist the word.
Mix it up.
I don't know why, but it's the power of death and life are in the tongue.
Yes.
This thing is like something that is uncontrollable. It is a burning fire that we do so much damage with when we don't think before we use it, when we don't pray and ask God to guide us and lead it into the way that it's supposed to. We want to speak life over people in our own lives, right?
Yeah, we do.
That is in the power of the tongue, which means that what you say to somebody isn't that the case that we make for even those who die by suicide? Because somebody talked about them,
right?
Because somebody told them that they were, losers or unworthy. When you hear those stories, it's because somebody used their tongue, put their mouth, as we say in the hood, right?
Right.
On somebody.
Right. Absolutely.
And so we do more damage that way.
Right. And that's part of the reason, my reason, why I became so quiet and I kept it so long, and I wouldn't tell family members because the family members that I did tell kind of did me dirty. So going through that, you just don't want to hear it anymore. You don't want to realize that you're supposed to love on me and help me and love me past my pain. Right. You don't get that. Right. Instead you get, girl, guess what? You don't want to hear it. You do not. Absolutely. That's the worst feeling you want to feel going through something like that. Honestly, not to mention, for real. These old sayings, right? These sayings that, we hear so often that we've learned from our elders. And one I could take right now and place it right here, and it means something so powerful. If you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say it at all. Amen. But people don't do that. They don't live by that.
Mental illness is so rampant, or at least it's being more exposed, right?
Right.
And so we're finding out more persons that are dealing with mental health issues. Yes. And because of this pandemic, what I've read and learned is that there are women and men who are becoming more abused now because of the isolation. Yes. Right? Because of the having to quarantine and stay at home for 3+ more months.
Right.
That persons are now being abused more. So is it that something that comes out now because I don't have I'm not working my job, I don't have my routine, that kind of thing. I'm spending more time with you. I get to know you a little bit more, better, deeper, like that happens. And that brings about the abuse, or is it something that was always there and we just ignore it?
I personally believe it was always there. And being that couples are locked in together and there's nothing to do, and I think it just brings out the rage for anything, because it doesn't take an abuser much to lash out at somebody. A woman could look at him wrong and he beating her up because they're locked in and they're confined. And who's to say that he wasn't already hurting her? Because before the physical is the verbal attack.
There it is.
Before the physical is the verbal attack.
you're breaking somebody down, right? It's because you have to mentally destroy them, take away their esteem, take away their confidence, make them not love themselves in order to manipulate them enough so that you can do the other
what you want to
do. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the narcissistic personality. What they do is they bring you in from your comfort zone and they crush you, and they tell you you're fat. They tell you you're ugly. They tell you you're unworthy. They tell you another man wouldn't want you. And your family, if your family cares, you won't be with me. And mentally, here we go. They busting down the mind, and you begin to believe that thing, and you gravitate to the abuser, the actual one that's hurting you. Yeah. Meanwhile, some family members don't know. But when they get in your head, when you allow a narcissistic person to get in your head, it's a wrap. It's totally over. They're going to devour you.
And that's what I often reference this book when I'm talking to persons about their story. And one of the things that, we hear when it comes to trial and tribulation, how it was usually always somebody that said something to the person that caused them to stumble, that caused them to fall, that caused them not to, pick up the thing that they wanted to do, really, because somebody else said something to them that deterred them. And I read this book called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and I'm telling you, there are 4 agreements. I only really remember one. And that, to me, was the most important one because it stuck with me, right?
Right.
Being a person who grew up with low self-esteem and lacked confidence in myself, then that was the one agreement that spoke to my spirit. And that agreement is, don't accept another person's poison as your truth.
Amen.
And that's what I'm hearing you tell me happens to those of us who suffer from this domestic violence piece. You're accepting somebody else's poison as your truth. I always tell my daughters, I have 2 girls. I always tell them, you have to know that you are beautiful before a man comes up to you and tells you you are. Amen. Because the fact of the matter is you need to know it for yourself, right? You got to say, my mama and my daddy and I already know that. Tell me something I don't already know. Right. Because when men, I tell you, I think they can, and this is not a male bashing session. I'm just saying what I taught my daughters is that men have a tendency to be able to sniff out insecurity. Watch
this. Not only are they able to sniff out insecurity, they're able to sniff out brokenness.
Yes.
You're able to tell your daughters that. Yes. You and your husband are preparing and laying down the foundation, right? Yes. But let me take you somewhere else. What about the little girls who don't have that validation? Then you start seeking it in men. So now they have the space they need to beat you down and break your mindset and use you as they will and then throw you away. See, your daughters are blessed. Some little girls that grow up to be women, they don't have the validation. They don't see it. So that they're wide open, so to say, like me. Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important that we really express this verbal piece, right? Even to like talking to my children every day, and each time that we talk, we could talk multiple times a day. I still tell my children, my husband still tells my children, we tell our girls, we tell our son, I love you.
Right.
Because that's another piece of it, right? Right. When you don't hear that and you don't feel that, then some dude can come around you
and do whatever.
First one to tell you he love you, and you all in.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Oh, we can't. We do our children such a disservice when we don't teach them those intricate, intimate
lessons from the start. Right.
Yes.
Right. I agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
So your marriage was your first experience with domestic violence.
Yes.
You get divorced after 4 years of marriage.
Thank God for Jesus.
What first, I want to know, tell us how you were strong enough to walk away from that.
Well, that marriage ended in him cheating on me. And that is my super, super disclaimer. Cheat, I'm out, right? So, but prior to that, I was getting tired of the stalking and my kids having nightmares. And I had to look myself in the mirror again and say, I have to stop this. I don't love him enough to stay, and I don't love him enough to mentally bother my children. So the cheating part, when I caught it with my own eyes, was all that I needed to say, listen, I'm out.
Gotcha.
I'm done with you. And that was it. Yeah.
Okay. So then that happens now, after you get separated, you know, for the time period, and then you become divorced. During that time, did he stalk? Did he do?
Oh, yeah. During that time is when he wound up going to jail for 5 years because he just wouldn't turn me loose. You know, he had binoculars in the bushes, and he watched me in the bushes, and he'll come by my house and throw eggs on the car and just call my job consistently. I mean, constantly calling. And then what are you trying to do? Set me up to get fired so that I may need you? Right. But my thing was, I was such a fighter. And again, I was still in my embarrassing, like I was still embarrassed. See, once you get delivered from the people, you're not embarrassed to ask for help.
Gotta say that.
See what I'm saying? So I was still, I can't tell nobody. They're gonna talk about me. I had an issue with people talking about me. Right. You know what I mean? And I didn't like to give people reasons to talk about me and make opinions of me. But this is the weaker me. You know, so I didn't tell anybody. I just kind of went along with the flow.
Because we definitely know that. I mean, you could be all things fabulous, thinking about yourself, confident, and self-assured, and people will still talk about you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't matter. It's just that comes with the test. As they say, that comes with the territory.
Yes,
of life.
It does.
You know, there are people who are just going to be heck bent on making sure that they utilize your name to
constantly
to say something negative against you or what have you. Right. God knows that we need to pray for them, especially when they A, don't know you, and B, they've not spent any time with you, right?
No, they just psychoanalyzing from what somebody else told them.
Somebody else.
And that's crazy. You know, you making an opinion over me, and you have not even said, hello, how are you?
Come on now.
But you have a big old, you know, all this stuff about me, and I'm like, who in the world, who are you? I don't even know you. But people do that. You know what I mean?
I know. Pray for them. We praying for you, brothers and sisters.
We sure are.
Yes. So, okay, now you get out of that relationship. You are single now for a period of about 3 years, right?
Yes.
And then you meet your next beau. And tell us how you want to tell us how you met him and then what happened.
Well, I'm able to say it now, but a couple of years ago, you would never get me to ever meet this. I met my ex on Black People Meet on a dating website, but not that I set that up. You know, my girlfriends were saying, oh, Tasha, you're beautiful. You don't need to be single. And I'm like, girl, bye. I don't want to be bothered. Like from when you're coming up out of that, you don't want to be bothered. Like, give me a minute. I need to breathe. So they set it up for me. And it was weeks before I actually went on to answer these hits. So one night I was bored. The kids were sleeping. See, the devil work at nighttime when your mind is not focused on where it's supposed to be. So I'm on the computer and I saw him. And he was all together lovely, perfect.
He was fine, huh?
And the devil comes in wolf clothing. We know that, right? So being already broken and not dating, he was everything that I wanted. So we talked for a period of maybe 4 to 6 months via computer and phone. And he started to come visit me. I would come see him one weekend. He would come see me one weekend. And that's where it started. That's where it started.
So full disclosure here and disclaimer, we're not saying that people shouldn't do their online dating if that's what they choose to do.
Right.
Not trying to throw blackpeoplemeet.com under the bus.
No, we're not.
This was just Tasha's experience.
Right.
And so that said though, so you meet, you start to hang out, and then how long now before you start witnessing, or did you witness prior to and just kind of swept it under the rug, those signs that this could be abusive? And what kind of abuse did you suffer by him?
Verbal first.
Okay. I always start with the verbal.
It always starts with the verbal because he was altogether lovely at first. I have nothing bad to say about him in the beginning. Perfect gentleman. And my name wasn't Tasha anymore. my name was the B word. And he would say it with such conviction. I've been called the B word 1,000 times, but it just didn't have this kind of effect on it. You know, he would say it and I would feel cut down, and every single time he said it, I would feel smaller and smaller
Now,
and
Tasha,
smaller.
let's ask the question. The first time he called you that,
Mm-hmm.
why's that? The first, now because you came out of a verbally abusive relationship already, right?
Right.
And you waited 3 years before you allowed yourself to go in and just say, okay, I'm gonna dip my foot in the water again and let me see where this leads me. But day one, B word, first time, I'm wondering what,
and I'm gonna tell you
what triggered.
Because I always speak from my lens and my story.
Of course.
It was a new relationship, and I just figured maybe I did something to trigger it. Mind you, I'm coming from a domestic violence relationship, so we always blame it on us at first. You know, maybe he had a bad day, or maybe I said something wrong, or maybe I put it on me, so I let it go. I let it go for a couple of times, and then eventually I broke up with him.
Okay.
See, I always like to say this. In order for you to heal and notice something, you first have to acknowledge you have a problem.
Right.
So, you know, back in the mirror again. You know, I was one of those people that talks to myself in the mirror. This is not okay. He can't be cursing me out. Like, who do you think he is? You know, I wouldn't say that to him, but I would say that to me. And enough of those conversations, I ended it. It's over. I'm not your B. You have to go. And I broke up with him.
Okay. But
I went back.
That's
and I'm going to go there.
That's why I get a little bit confused. Why would you go back to that? Knowing that, right, that you had already come through the first catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, yeah, no, that's not my name. That's not what my birth name is. That's not what was given to me. That's not on my birth certificate. That's not who I am. Because I also often tell my children, it's not about what they call you, it's what's
your answer to.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, that's not me. And you don't get that. So then tell me what it is that happened that you felt as though he changed in some way. And
first of all,
it's going to be different.
He was very persistent after I left him. The calls didn't stop. The gifts didn't stop. Because that's what abusers do. When you leave them or you back up off of them, you're going to get showered in gifts. I love you. I'm sorry. Mind you, I was already a weak and broken vessel coming into that thing, you know? So enough of hearing that. And I'm like, well, maybe he changed. Here we go again. Maybe it was me. Let me give him another chance. And my mother always told me, when God delivers you from something, don't turn around and go back.
And not only that, though, and that was excellent advice from her. But not only that, then the question I do have, and I'm asking I'm asking questions such as this because I think that this is going to help deliver somebody, right?
Amen.
And that they see maybe themselves or someone they know in this type of situation, and they'll be set free. But I have to ask them the question of, so you decide to go back, but during the 3 years that you were from divorced to meeting him, did you do any self-work?
I did a lot of self-work.
Okay.
I did, so I thought. I did a lot of self-work. I spent time with myself, I reintroduced me to me, and I happen to like me. Some of the things that my ex-husband would say to me and do to me, I realized those things I knew they were not true, but I got another intimacy with myself. Like, hey, I kind of like you. You know, you're kind of cool. I went shopping by myself. Like, I did a lot of things by myself. I knew what the second abuser did was not right. But again, I blamed it on me, and just like myself and other women, we think they change. They're going to change. This is the weak Tasha when I was going through. He changed. Maybe he had a bad day because he had a very, very stressful job, and that too played into a lot of the hits. So I come to believe, right? And I would just always blame it on something else versus making him be accountable for the things that he did. But again, in order to realize you have a problem, like an alcoholic, you have to admit that you have one,
Right. So
and I wasn't there yet.
the work you did. So I hear that in that one of my, and I talked about this with Ms. Nikki Turner in the first episode of Inspired Purpose. She was saying something similar in her relationship, right? Where she was involved with someone and got to a place that when she finally walked away, she did exactly what you said, where you finally now get reacquainted with you,
right?
You are and what you like. And we referenced the movie, I think it was The Runaway Bride, where there's the end scene where Julia Roberts, her character is there, and Richard Gere's character comes in, and there are all these eggs on the counter, and he's like, okay, and she's like, yeah, I found out I don't like them over easy, I don't like them over hard, I don't like them fried, I don't like them, As a matter of fact, I just found out that I don't like eggs. So it was that reacquainting, getting to know herself and what she liked, as opposed to always catering to what someone else liked, and then taking their likes and just, ascribing to them, even though it made her miserable, right?
Right.
That's what I hear you say. But the work, I'm wondering, when did you, or if you did during that break, is the work that stops you from blaming you, that makes you recognize, right, that it's not me, and that this is your issue, and just because you had a bad day at work doesn't mean that I have to have a bad day. That
did not come from me until later in that relationship, in that abuse, because I just was willing to take whatever he gave me at that time.
So then you went from verbal abuse to now it's physical.
Not yet.
When did that happen?
Not yet. We were living in 2 different states. Gotcha. You can hear me? Okay, cool. You can hear me now. We were living in 2 different states. So the relationship became where he wanted to see me more, I guess, right? So I moved to the state where he was. I mean, it was a struggle. I went back and forth with myself. Should I do it? I thought about my son at the time. And my son said, Ma, I don't like him. And the Bible also tells us, out of the mouth of babes, but I didn't listen, right? So I went anyway. And we moved there, and it was opening Pandora's box. And it was at that point that I realized I made the worst mistake of my life when I moved there with him, when I agreed to move in his house.
So how long were you living together before he hit you for the first time?
Maybe 2 to 3 months in. 2 to 3 months in. 2 to 3 months in.
I mean, not that it is, not that it matters in a way that it was legitimate, right? But what was his so-called reason for why he put his hand on you?
In this particular case, he didn't need a reason. He needed a reason. He had a very stressful job. And at the time, I was not working yet. I was going to work at the same job, but I was in transition to going. He would come home in any kind of rage, any kind of fit. And the verbal abuse was crazy than anything he could have physically have done to me. So it started with the verbal abuse, and I was stupid now. You stupid, and you stupid B, and I'm sitting there like, I don't know who he's talking to, but I know I'm just not gonna say nothing. So now you water yourself down, and you become that little girl in the corner now. Like, I'm just gonna stay out of his way because he is in here straight bugging. And he didn't need a reason. If somebody else made him mad, that thing came on me. The mirror immediately turned to me because I was there. So used me, I guess, in his mind.
Right.
That's what happened.
So how long did you put up with that?
I was with him for 3.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
And that's all.
And but the physical laying on of hands abuse wasn't for 3.5 years, right?
2.5 years.
2.5 years of the 3.5.
Yeah.
So Tasha, here again.
And wait, let me just say this.
Okay.
People that don't or have not been a victim of any kind of domestic violence would not understand what I'm telling you. And that's for the viewers that's probably hashtagging me like, well, why she stay? And because I can hear it. I can hear it. I hate that question. And I know that it's a bunch of people that's probably listening that's wanting to know. So let me answer that. If you are or have not been, or if you've been blessed not to go through what I'm talking about, don't ever judge a woman that is, because at that point, you don't know why she's staying. Right. I had someone just DM me prior to you, us doing this interview, where people are talking about me because I stayed. Women stay for their own reasons, and it's not for other people to judge them or mock them or talk bad about them, because that very word that come out of your mouth might have that woman commit suicide to get away.
Wow.
So if you can't love people past their pain, if you're not willing to open your door to feed and help and protect and provide safety, don't say anything, because you can literally be a detrimental source to that person.
That was,
you know what I mean?
Part I absolutely understand, but for the sake of the interview, right, that was going to be my question, because I know that that's what people are asking. Right. You know, that's what people want to know. And that's the other thing. It's like, you got to get to a place of recognizing that persons are absolutely dealing with their own issues, whether it's insecurity, whether it's low self-esteem, lack of confidence, even check it out, even physical ailments and illnesses, you know, make people do things that they might not necessarily want to do or would have done had they been fully healthy, right?
Right.
We don't know why. But the point of the matter is that's why I think it's so powerful what you said. Don't cast judgment, but as if we especially are Christian, then we have to love them past their pain, right? In terms of pain, we all have suffered some sort of pain in our lives, just not the same pain, right? I didn't go through and haven't suffered through domestic violence, but you did. That doesn't mean that I look at you and I get to call you anything other than, you know, my sister, my friend, you know, my girl, whatever. And look, I'm here for you if you need me, right? That's how we have to treat our friends, because it does, I think, make those who have gone through even more afraid to say anything to anybody, because then it's that same abuse all over again.
You're getting hit twice on both sides now.
Exactly.
You're getting hit twice. And the worst thing that I'm talking from my lens, is for me to open up and you use what I told you to crucify me. That's the worst thing ever. So I didn't talk. I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, being vulnerable is what is absolutely necessary in any relationship.
Right.
You have to be vulnerable in relationships, right?
But let me just go back a little bit.
You can't be vulnerable to the point of, you know, continuing to get abused and don't think that that person is not going to eventually throw up the wall, the iron one, and not let anybody in. And then what good does that do anybody who's suffering and is crying out for help?
You know, let me just go back a little bit when you was talking about how people just stay there for low self-esteem and low I didn't suffer from any of that.
Okay.
You know, I never had low self-esteem. Those were not my issues. And again, for people that didn't go through it, I hear a lot in interviews and lectures, people want to capitalize and people want to say, well, she stayed because her mama got beat up. No, don't put a title on it. Because again, women go through those things for their own personal reasons.
So then let's talk about your personal reason then. Then why? What was yours?
Why did I stay with him?
Yeah, what was your personal reason?
Because I loved him, and I wanted to
generalize, you know, low self-esteem and those things. That's
but no, that wasn't it.
That's what made people, you know, accept a lot of things that they wouldn't normally accept. But I get it. We started it off by saying that they have their own separate reasons, so that's good because now here's the point that you get to share and tell us what other reasons are out there. So what was your reason?
My reason for staying with him was what I talked about earlier. He came to my state to pick me up against family's ruling. They didn't like him. Well, I had one family member say, Tasha, I don't like him. He gonna make you cry. You know, don't go with him. And all of those they just was anti him, right? So I went against my better judgment. My son even said, Ma, I don't like him. I listened to my son because I wanted to be with him, right? So he came and he scooped us up, and there we went. We were off. So my reason was I wanted to be with this man that I created in my mind was the perfect guy, and I was staying. For, like you said, in the hood, our terms in the hood, I was a ride or die chick. I was staying. If I'm committed to you, I'm not going anywhere. And until he started that was my mindset. I'm not going where he's going to change. That's why I didn't leave at first. That's why I didn't want to go anywhere, because he has a bad job. He's frustrated. I was making excuses for him.
Right.
Remind you, I still was not at the point where I'm like, no, it's not my thing anymore. I wasn't there yet. I was still in a honeymoon phase, and
so let me ask you a question, because you said something, and I think it got lost a little bit in the crosstalk, right? You said I loved him, but what did you love?
I love the fact that he was a protector.
Was he?
He was a protector. He wouldn't let people hurt me, outsiders, but he was hurting me. At the time, like I said, I was in a new state. He took care of me. So there you go with the financial aspect. He took care of me, great care of me in a financial aspect, and my son. We went for nothing. If I looked at it, he got it for me. So that was my reason in the beginning to stay. And I was in a foreign state. I didn't know anything. So he was it. He's all I had.
Got you. So bring us up to the point when you decided to break free. What happened?
Well, I was experiencing black eyes and broken fingers and the B word constantly. And nobody's going to want you if you leave me. And you and your mother don't get along. Like, all of my pain that I put into him, being that he was supposed to be my husband and my protector, he used that very thing to throw darts at me, right? So that's breaking me down. That's beating me down. It got to the point where I was attacked by his pit bull. And he allowed his pit bull to bite a very large part of the back of my arm out. He let the dog out of the cage, and the dog bit me. And I went to the hospital. The ambulance came, and everybody kept saying the same thing. How did you get the dog off of you? Because pit bulls don't turn them loose. And in my mind, I'm like, this dog could have killed me, because the dog just didn't run up on my arm. That was a defense wound, because the dog was coming from my neck, which means the dog was charging. Either he said sicker or pushed them, but the anticipation was to get the jugular. Because when I looked up, the dog was off his feet coming from my neck, and I threw this, and the dog got me. So I knew it was over. And right around in that time, I guess after the healing and whatever it was I was going through, you know the story, but I'm gonna share it to the viewers to answer your question. What made you say, I'm out? So to the viewers, Donna and I, our father had passed away, and we were standing in Starbucks. You remember the story. And I think I started showing you guys pictures of the dog bite and the black eyes. And it was your first time seeing it. And I know, as I'm looking at your face now, you're kind of watering up, but that's how you were. And I saw the effect that it had on you. I didn't tell you, but as you went through my phone, the more and more you went through that phone, I saw your eyes, welling up, and I'm like, okay. But the impact that got me was when we were in Starbucks, and my older sister, Debbie, was standing there at the counter, stirring up her coffee, and we had just buried our dad, right? And I looked at Deb and I said, oh, you're crying, in my mind, you're crying over daddy. And I said that to her, it's gonna be all right, we're gonna get through this. And she looked at me and said, first she shook her head, right? And I'm looking, she said, I'm not crying over daddy. I'm crying for you. And I said, this is your older sister talking to you, what you know, how much you know, because I still wasn't willing to be open to tell you guys everything, right?
Right.
And her words to me impacted my life so much. And I am forever grateful for you to be an sister to listen and not judge me and not talk down to me. I thank you for loving me past all of that stuff, even in that moment in Starbucks. Thank you. And may God bless you. And everything you poured in me, I hope you give it back, right on back to you, right? So my sister Debbie looked at me and she said, if you don't go home, I would never forget these words. And even when I speak to women that I talk to on my Unseen Wounds page, I hear my sister. I hear you. I see your face. Debbie said, if you don't go back home and leave this man, the next funeral we're coming to is yours. And
Right.
she said, and you will be selfish because you have children and you have people that love you if you go back and allow him to kill you. From that day to this day right here, I told God, if you get me through this, I'm never going back. And I went home and I had space savers and garbage bags and I didn't pack. I was just throwing stuff in my car and I left, and that was it.
Yeah. So
but it was from the love of you and Debbie. I heard it. I would listen to people, but I heard you guys and I saw your face. And what she said is true. You will be selfish if you go back and let him kill you. The next funeral is yours.
That's right. And
That's
so that's what started the ball rolling from you getting away from him.
Yes.
You got away from him. And you mentioned it in telling your story. So we're going to get ready to close up and just talk about now your desire, your purpose now, right? Your purpose is to help other women come out of this and come out alive, right? And walk in their divine destiny. And so you started a Facebook page, a group called Unseen Wounds.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The Facebook page that I started, Unseen Wounds, is a page that was created and inspired by your help. Thank you again. On that page, I want to help and encourage women. So I always have something positive to say. I started off with just sharing my testimony. And I started off with telling people what started with me and what happened with me, from the verbal abuse to the dog bite. Again, I talk about getting delivered from the people. I am no longer ashamed. So therefore, I can't help another woman if I'm still not able to be transparent. So I put my injuries and my bruises and my dog bites up there just to let women know you're going to get through this, because God has no respect to person. If he did it for me, he's going to do it for you.
That's right.
So that's what I do. I try to encourage women on that page and provide the 800 number. And just recently, I got a testimonial that a young woman and her child came out. Like, the people on the other end of the 800 number blessed them. And she was so happy. And that's, if I can save one life, then my mission is definitely working.
Well worth it, right?
Yes.
Even though we suffer and we go through, once we come out and we walk in that purpose that God has laid before us because of it,
right.
And the pain is not greater than the purpose, right?
Amen.
The purpose now has become much greater than the pain. And I thank you for even having to, and I feel terrible you had to, but God knows, and only God, right?
Can I say this real quick? I had to go through that. I had to. I had to go through it so I can bless other women. So when I stand up and I talk to other women, I won't just be saying, oh, I know how that black eye feel. I live the black eye. So I thank God again. He used me for sacrifice to bless.
That was absolutely going to be my point. Exactly. I thank you for having to endure that in order to help other people. Absolutely.
Amen.
That's exactly what all of our pain and all of our trials and all of our tribulations are for. Right? We go through because we all are going to have to walk our journey in the manner of which God would have us to walk it. So what do I mean by that? That means you're not going to meet the same people necessarily that I'm going to meet. My journey is taking me in another direction, and I'm going to meet persons along that journey that are going to want to and need to hear the testimony that I share about the pain that I endured. How that has already and will bless someone who's also going through the situation that I went through. And that is something that eventually I'm going to share with our viewers about my testimony and how it is blessing people, to include even one of my own daughters it blessed. So if I had to go through it just to help her, then to God be the glory that it happened. And we come out so much stronger. We come out so much better because of it. And it's nothing but God and the Holy Spirit inside of us that gets strengthened each time that we have to endure. Mm-hmm. And I thank you for doing what you do to help others to come out of this situation. And like I said before, and will continue to say, thank you for helping them rather, come out of the situation alive. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For helping them come out of this situation alive. And for that, I tell you, thank you very much. And as a final question, I always ask every guest is, you ready?
I'm ready.
Finish the sentence.
Okay.
I am Tasha.
I am Tasha.
Inspired by blank with a purpose for blank.
Well, I am inspired by the late, great Nipsey Hussle. And my purpose is to bless and help change lives just as he did.
Amen. All right, my dear, I thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
And may God continue to bless you. I love you.
I love you back.
Be blessed.
All righty.
Well,
all righty.
And stay safe, okay?
I will. Love you.